There is a moment when the sun disappears, when darkness falls, and you're left with just your fears. That's the moment you feel your first pang of doubt. That's the moment when the night comes out.
Episode 1: Staircases. Think about a staircase for just a minute. It conveys people up or down, right? It has a destination most of the time. It gets people from one level to another. There's a good chance there's a staircase where you work or live and you don't even think about it. However, when something commonplace is found in a location it shouldn't be, a mystery evolves. When a staircase appears to lead to nowhere, what horrors might be at the top? The kind of horrors that come when the night comes out. Shut up! You are so full of shit. There is not. Simon was the one talking, I was the one listening, and I knew right away he was full of shit. Simon was always telling stories. When he got drunk or high, and we were both, the stories got more outrageous and crazy. "I'm telling you, it's true," Simon replied. He had a smile on his face, but it could have been because of the pot. It was hard to tell with him. He was one of those guys who could tell whoppers with such a straight face. This summer, Simon had gotten a job with the Forest Service. We lived in rural South Dakota, which meant there were a lot of trees, lots of forest. He worked in one of the national parks, with the hat and everything. I had known Simon most of my life. We were both considered outsiders to our classmates and then the rest of the world. The chief tormentor in our life was Douglas Hansen, our former best friend. These days, though, he was a total shithead who never ceased making our lives miserable. A jock with ice blue eyes which pinned you to the spot, chiseled face, the kind of guy with rich parents you just knew would go on to be just as wealthy and get everything he ever wanted. Simon and I were destined to work shitty jobs and maybe live most of our lives in one-bedroom apartments. Simon already had his in a building near downtown. I still lived with my mom. The one thing all three of us had, though, were the amazing dark night skies of South Dakota. Simon and I would find some long, forgotten road and share some beers. We'd talk until all hours. He loved telling me about the shit he had seen on the job. When we were all friends, Douglas joined us too. Laying back in the grass as kids, our bikes forgotten by the sidewalk or tossed across the lawn, looking up at stars so close you felt you could touch them. Not that Douglas admired those same stars with us these days, but it was hard to forget how close we had all been at one point. I was just a little jealous of Simon's gig, too. I worked at the grocery store bagging food and shagging carts. It paid well enough to live in this town, especially when you had free room and board, but sure felt like the dead end it was. What did I have to look forward to other than maybe managing some aspect of the store? Wearing short-sleeve, button-down shirts with shitty ties while carrying a clipboard and counting slices of meat in the deli? Simon wasn't exactly climbing the corporate ladder, but at least he was outside. He got to see things, crazy things. Like the things he was talking about tonight. "Staircases?" I asked, downing the last of the beer in my can and opening a new one. Simon held up a hand, his eyes cast upward at the dazzling stars overhead. "I saw it my goddamn self, a wooden fucking staircase just right in the middle of the woods. Like when you'd see in a fancy house, but just all by itself, in the middle of nowhere." "You're jerking my chain," I said, pushing Simon and nearly knocking him over. Both of us started to laugh, but Simon got serious really fast. "No, but you know my boss is David and Francine, right?" he said. "The two who've been there forever? Anyway, what happened was some hiking motherfucker stopped and talked to one of them. I think it was Fran, but whatever. He said he had been out hiking and came across a weird thing, a staircase. He wondered if there had been a house there or if maybe someone had filmed a movie in the woods or something. I don't know what Fran said, but when she came back to the building later on, she told me and Dave. Dave and Fran exchanged looks, and it was Dave who said something like, Not again, or some shit. I stood there with a goofy grin on my face. I was waiting for this to all be a joke. Sure, a joke they play on the new kid. But instead, we got into one of those trucks and headed out into the woods. Simon cracked open another beer. We were nearly out now. I noticed his hand shook as he drank. He wasn't really scared. I could tell he was just nervous, worried. Something nagged at him and made him very concerned. If this story was complete bullshit, he certainly was not acting as if it were. There's a difference between outright fear and worry, right? Simon was not the type who was nervous like this. He was really laid back and chill. You know, the woods out there get really dark and dense, fast. There was still a path or road, but it was gravel and dirt. I wondered why anyone would hike out there. I mean, where did he come from? Where was he going? Why did you want to get lost in a place like this? The world turns really primitive out in the forest, man. You can just look up and see the treetops, but sometimes they're so close together you can't tell where one tree ends and another begins. This is what the world looked like when man first climbed down from the branches. Can you imagine? All those monkey men climbing down, then looking up to see what they had just done? Must have scared the shit out of them. He took a long drink. Some of it dribbled down his chin, and he wiped it away with his sleeve, almost as an afterthought. So we drove further and further into the forest and eventually came to a stop. Dave and Fran got out and trudged into the woods off the road. I followed, and there was just something odd about the air. Maybe it was the paranoia, but it was colder and quiet. You know, the woods are normally full of sounds. There's so many fucking birds, but not this time. Just the wind and the rustling of the leaves. Like applause over our head or something. Except it wasn't so pleasant. We walked for a while until we came to a small clearing. I nearly choked on my tongue. Simon paused again. This time he didn't look up, and he seemed to have forgotten he had a drink in his hand. He just stared off into the distance, like he was seeing things which had happened earlier in the day. Well, what? I asked. I had chills running up and down my spine, and my question quavered, giving away my nervousness. There was a fucking staircase in the middle of the fucking forest, he said matter-of-factly, and drank a big swig from his beer. Bullshit. Simon laughed, but it was as nervous as I sounded. He belched from the beer. Nah, man, there it was. Wooden stairs, railing up one side. It was like something had blown away a house around it, just leaving this behind. There was even like part of the wall beneath the stairs, with green paint. The wood looked stained and varnished. Bullshit, I repeated. Simon shook his head, but he couldn't look me in the eye. I was sure this was all going to be a joke. Perhaps this was a gag his new coworkers had played on him, and Simon thought it would be hilarious to do the same to me. I even pushed him, shoved hard against his shoulder, and laughed. Simon leaned over, and there was a hint of a smile on his face, but mostly he looked nervous, maybe drifting towards frightened. Shit, you're serious, I said, the laughter and jokes drying up in my throat. I wish I were joking. I can't even explain how I felt while standing there. Just kept looking at Dave and Fran, waiting for them to laugh just like you were right now. This was the joke they always played on the new guy, I thought. Maybe there was a house out here or something, and they had put this in the middle of the woods to freak out the newbies. But one look at both of them, and I knew this was not a joke. They looked worried. But why be worried? I asked, but had to admit the weird vibe from Simon was rubbing off on me. I was feeling worried too. Geez, it's just a staircase, right? Simon shook his head. They saw the look on my face and said they'd seen these in different places around the forest. Then they both told me they had spoken to other rangers in other parks, and those guys were finding these from time to time too. Just staircases of all styles, sizes, shapes, right in the middle of the woods. Nothing else there. The stairs would be there for a few days, then it would be gone, but then it would show up again somewhere else. Sometimes the same set of stairs, sometimes not. He shook his head, thinking. So I get out of the car and I'm walking all around this set of stairs, just unbelieving. I keep waiting for the joke. Fran and Dave look at it too. I ask them, what's it from? Where do the stairs come from? He took a drink. Know what they said? They don't know. I said. My voice was barely a whisper. Bingo, Simon said, and he winked. No clue, they say. Well, I ask, did they know anyone who ever climbed the stairs? No, they say no one ever climbs them. Why not, I ask. Because they don't, is the reply. I stare at him and realize my mouth is hanging open. I snapped it shut and then I brayed laughter like a donkey. It took me a few minutes to realize I was laughing alone. Well, come on, I said. Don't you see? Don't you get it? Of course it's a joke. If not Fran and Dave, then someone else. Or maybe there's some fucked up performance artist out there, creating staircases and putting them in the woods just to fuck with people's heads. Simon gave me a casual look, which was so sad. It was as if he had learned something important about the world and was trying to bring me along, but I was too unevolved to understand. He shook his head, with a sad smile plastered across his lips. I thought about all those things, but it's not. Look, I asked them if anyone ever walked up, as I said, and they told me no. So I stood at the base of the stairs, got as close as I could so the tips of my shoes were touching the base of the first step, and looked up. The top of the stairs was, I don't know, blurry. You know, like when it's the middle of summer and you look down one of those long highways and the edge of the horizon looks sort of blurry, as if there's heat coming right off the road? Well, there is. This is what it looked like, but it also didn't. It was hard to see directly. You sort of had to look at it out of the edge of your vision. Simon stopped. He actually choked a bit, as if he were crying. I looked at him closely, and I could see he was getting more upset. All the nights of conversation, whether with Douglas or just the two of us, I had never seen Simon like this before. I don't know how long I stood there, but it felt like a long time. Time itself seemed to stretch out in weird ways. I felt an odd sensation in my head. Then I saw something. I waited for a few moments for him to continue, but he didn't. There were tears in his eyes. What did you see? I asked. I don't know. Been thinking about it ever since I saw it, but I couldn't look at it directly. I just saw things moving around just past the blurry part. I don't know if they were creatures or just the trees beyond the blurry part, and because the air was blurry or what. There were things just beyond. I didn't know what to say, but I could see the terror in his eyes, and a tear streaked its way down his face. I wanted to say something to make sure he was okay, but I didn't know what to say. I felt cold despite the warmth of the night, and I could tell he wasn't making this up. I had just hoped he was when I teased him. Now it was evident he was scared. Simon had seen something. But you know the part of it all that's really been bothering me? He asked suddenly, wiping absently at his face. I mean, I eventually stepped away, and then Fran and Dave said they would put this yellow tape up to rope off the area. We'd check on it over the next couple of days and see if it was still there, but there wasn't much we could do. So we did that, but there's one thing which has been bugging and nagging at me since I saw it. You know what it is? I just shook my head. What is a staircase? He asked. I thought he might just go on, but he waited, and I realized he was waiting. I don't know, I said. A way to get up to the second floor, a way to walk up? Simon nodded. Then how do you get back down? Float? I cleared my throat. No, you take him down, too. Right. It goes both ways. When I looked up, I realized I could walk right up and maybe right into the blurry area. Maybe I just disappear. Maybe I just fall off the top on the other side. But I kept thinking about the fact stairs go both ways. What if something came down? What if things had been coming down all those stairs Fran and Dave had talked about? The words hung in the air. I didn't know what else to say. What's been coming down? He repeated. Of course, I had to see this for myself. The next morning, despite the hangover, I woke Simon up and told him we had to visit the staircase. Simon never got hangovers. He didn't get the headaches despite all the drinking and drugs from the night before. Simon was already awake and ready to go into work when I called him.
I don't think it's a good idea,
he said. I have to see it, I replied.
We don't even know if it'll still be there today.
Simon protested.
Besides, I don't even think I can get away. I'm supposed to be with Fran on an entirely different part of the park.
Come on, I insisted. You're Simon. You can do anything. It's why we've always been friends. Simon laughed, then he sighed. Then he relented.
Okay,
he said at last.
Look, I'll try to get away around 1. Come to the main shed, right? You've been there before.
I agreed. Then I spent the rest of the day trying to focus on other things. It was pretty much impossible. I had the day off and there was nothing else to do. I eventually went online and fell down a rabbit hole reading about other people who claimed they found staircases in the woods. Most people said it was all bullshit, but my friend insisted he had seen one. I began to wonder if Simon would take me out into the woods and then reveal it was a joke. I got to the shed, just off a main road, a full hour before Simon said he would be there. I got out of my car and paced around. Overhead, the sun was burning against my head, but the birds were active. It was beautiful. The trees were vibrant and green, the sky above a bright blue. I had never heard such a racket in the trees. This was Simon's office, outside. Simon showed up looking sweaty and worried. His shirt was dirty. I didn't ask what he had been doing, just got into the vehicle. He drove off, and we didn't speak at all during the drive. We just kept getting deeper and deeper into the woods. The trees overhead slowly and eventually blotted out the sun. It was like going back in time. Eventually, Simon came to a stop, and the look of fear on his face was alarming. At first, I couldn't even see what he was looking at, and then I saw the object just behind 2 trees. I could only see part of it, but what I could see seemed to confirm it was a staircase. What the? I muttered as I exited the vehicle. The ground was soft beneath my feet. I barely noticed. Simon got out after me, and I heard him mutter some sort of warning, but I barely understood what it was. I was hypnotized. Have you ever just seen something where it should not be? I remember once viewing the damage after a severe storm, way back when I was a kid. There had been a tornado, and as we drove through one damaged area, I sat in the back of the car peering out the window at the ruins with eyes wide. Then couldn't help myself but laugh when I saw a toilet in perfect condition in the middle of a tree in a field. No house anywhere close, just a toilet. My mother told me to be quiet. Nothing about this was funny, but I couldn't help but imagine someone trying to use the thing up in a tree. For a kid my age, this was prime comedy. This was the same sort of feeling. I wanted to laugh. I also felt something odd within my chest, something weird. The air felt too thick, and I soon noticed the birds were gone. All the sounds I had been hearing before were silenced. I approached cautiously. The feeling of static electricity grew and grew. The hairs on my arm stood up. When I got within a few feet, I laughed nervously. "This is ridiculous," I said. "I know, right?" Simon said in a hushed tone. I had forgotten he was there and jumped when he spoke. "Go right to the bottom of the steps. Look up." I still moved cautiously, but I walked until the tips of my shoes touched the bottom step. I was looking down at my feet as I approached, and when my toes touched the solid wood, I raised my head. Step after step, up and up, at least 20, all varnished wood. I wished I knew what different types of wood looked like to know what they made these from, but I had no idea. Each plank shone in the dim sunlight. I saw the swirls and swoops of the wood grain. Then the stairs just stopped. At the top was a small landing, which ventured off into nothingness. Except this wasn't quite true. Not exactly nothing. I turned my head slightly to the left so I wasn't looking at the top directly. There it was. The weird hazy thing Simon had talked about earlier, like looking at pavement on a hot day. Jesus. I know. Simon repeated. It's hard to fathom. Just keep your head sideways and try to keep watching. See if you see anything else. I stood there with my head slightly sideways. I waited. Out of the corner of my right eye, the sky seemed to waver and shimmy. Then, suddenly, something behind the wavering moved. I couldn't see what it was, and it happened so fast, I whipped my head around. Of course, as soon as I looked at it head-on, the movement and wavering stopped. You saw it, didn't you? Simon whispered his question. I don't know what I saw. I whispered back. Right, but you saw something. Simon whispered. I just nodded. Did you try walking up the steps? Simon looked as if I had lost my mind. Are you nuts? No, thank you. I'm curious, I muttered. Don't you dare. Simon replied, putting a hand on my shoulder. I don't know what might come out of there and grab you. I heard Simon speaking, but the words didn't register. I'd already put one foot up on the first step. There was nothing to it. No electrical jolt. The stairs themselves didn't come to life and try to grab me. It was just wood. I went up another step, then another. Simon said something else, but this time I utterly lost the words. There was just the breath in my chest and the hammering of my heart against my ribcage. I didn't run, just looked down at my shoes and put one foot in front of the other. Before long, I was at the top. I looked at the floor, just hardwood flooring, perhaps oak, no carpeting, just a few feet of landing, then seemingly nothing. When I raised my head, I could just barely detect the wavy, hazy sensation. This close, even looking straight at it showed me the waviness. I felt compelled to move forward, but I heard Simon raise an alarm. It was a compulsion I could not possibly resist at this point. I extended my right arm before I had even realized I had done so. As I got closer, the haziness got worse. Now I could see it without a doubt. There was something on the other side, for sure. Things moving back and forth across the opening or whatever this was. I was now sure this led to someplace else, some other planet or dimension. A portal. There are things over there, I said. I had no idea how loudly I had said it. I think I see something alive. I was inches away now. There was a tingling sensation in my fingertips. This began to extend up my forearm, to my elbow, then my upper arm, then my shoulder. Pain began to flare at the fingertips, but I barely noticed. It was like it hypnotized me and I was unable to stop. Then something hit me hard across the back of the head. A more intense pain flared behind my eyes, and everything swam around me like a painting whose paint was running. I let out a yelp of surprise and staggered to my left. My foot found open air and I lost my balance. Pinwheeling my arms, I fell over the side of the staircase and hit the ground hard. All the wind was knocked out of me, and I laid there gasping and wheezing, trying to speak. My head felt as if I had been struck repeatedly with a baseball bat. My left leg hurt because I had fallen on it. Simon rushed over and put his hand on my shoulder. I'm sorry, he repeated. I didn't know what else to do to knock you out of your trance. Just relax, breathe, relax. Slowly, the world came back into focus. I felt as if I would suffocate for several moments that felt like hours. Then the oxygen started flowing again. The world swam back into focus. I was in pain all over, and the back of my head hurt. When I reached back and touched the spot where the pain was most intense, I found it wet, and the tips of my fingers came away red with blood. What the fuck did you do to me? I asked when I could finally once again speak. I threw a rock at you, Simon said, then he smiled. Good shot, too. You asshole, you could have killed me. I protested, but it was a dim protest. I had a feeling he had actually just saved my life. "Dude, you were about to stick your arm right into that hazy thing up there," Simon said. "You were starting to get hazy too." I was? Yeah, like your fingertips and your right arm were getting sorta, hazy and hard to see. Like the edges of your arms and hand were being erased. Shit. I looked back up at the staircase. From this angle, I couldn't see the hazy area at all. Just a weird set of stairs in the middle of the woods. "I could see people," I said. Or something alive on the other side. The closer I got, the more I could see. I think it's some kind of portal. Simon nodded. "Yeah, I can see that. But do you notice how there are no birds around? No sounds of nature at all? When even the animals stay away, something bad is going down around these stairs." I couldn't help but agree with this assessment. I didn't know what had happened to me, but it had not been pleasant, and I now felt sick to my stomach. My head hurt, and my right arm had a weird, tingly, numb sensation. "Let's get out of here," I said. "Yeah, let's." Simon helped me to my feet, and we left more quickly than we had arrived. Things might have just gone the way of weird dreams and tall tales had Douglas not been such an asshole that very night. I think Simon and I were done with the staircase and willing to just let it go. Maybe it would just vanish in a few days. Maybe it would just stay there, but we were never going back. I had the bruises to show for my adventure and did not want to even see a staircase again. Then, the night after we were out there looking at the thing, Simon and I decided we needed to have a drink or 7. Why we headed into town, I don't know. It seems like fate was taking a turn at things with us by that point. Something made the staircase appear when it did and brought Simon out there to see it. Something made him tell me and then insisted I had to head out there to see it for myself. Something wanted me to see what I saw. We knew Douglas and his band of idiots would likely be in town, but Simon said we could find a booth in a corner and stay out of their way. Of course, such plans are never fulfilled. We walked in and saw Douglas with his group of 10 friends right at the bar, hitting on Josie, the poor red-headed woman manning the bar from the other side. She looked exhausted already, which set off alarm bells inside me, indicating Douglas and his friends had been there for a while getting shit-faced. I froze the moment the door opened, and we both stared at Doug and his cronies. They were facing the bar, so Simon tapped me on the shoulder and then indicated a booth in the far corner with a twitch of his head. The booth was dark because someone had broken the light above it and it had remained so for years, apparently never to be fixed. We ordered drinks and sat hunched over the table, casting nervous glances back towards the bar. Every time the group over there erupted into cheers, we cringed. "I'd like to take him to the staircase," I muttered. "I can't believe what an asshole he's turned into." Simon mused. "Remember how we were so tight as kids? Hung out all the time, the 3 amigos. Then he got to puberty and turned into this dickhead." "Well, look at that face," I said. "That face belongs to a guy who will always get what he wants, get who he wants, just because he looks so handsome. I mean, Jesus, I ain't gay, but he'd make me at least pause and reconsider if he came onto me." Simon and I both burst out laughing. It was probably a louder and longer laugh than the joke warranted, but Douglas had at least helped us forget about the staircase for a moment. When the laughter died down, we both took long drinks from the beverages in front of us. "Okay, so what are we gonna do?" I asked. Simon shrugged. "About what?" "You know what." "We do nothing," Simon replied. "We send out an alert telling hikers there's something there. I don't know what. I'll ask Fran and Dave tomorrow. We'll even rope off an area with the fucking yellow tape we have, just like a crime scene." "Don't you think just ignoring it until it goes away is the wrong thing?" I asked in earnest. "We just talked about how staircases go both ways, right? Don't we have to stop whatever's on the other side from coming through? You said yourself you felt whatever was on the other side was bad, right?" Simon shrugged again. "What should we do then? Burn it down or something?" "Right, set a fire in the middle of a forest," Simon snorted. Makes a lot of sense. Are you trying to get me fired? Are you trying to set South Dakota on fire? I had to reluctantly admit he had a point. It was not deep into summer, but it had already been dry. Although fire warnings weren't out yet, the prevailing thought was they would be soon. What if you just take it apart? I asked. There has to be a bulldozer or one of those little dozer machine things you can access. Just drive it through the base or take it out and let the thing fall down. Maybe if it falls, it'll just vanish. You watch too many horror movies, Simon said with a smirk. I don't think it's how it works. What the hell are you two idiots talking about over here? I felt my stomach clench. Of course, it was too much to hope Douglas would just be fine hanging out with his friends. No, he had to see us, and the entire network of his pals were clustered around him and around our table. I was talking about how your mother had my dick in her mouth just this morning, asshole. Simon said so suddenly I felt my jaw nearly unhinge when it dropped open. Jesus, Simon, what the fuck? I hissed from behind closed lips. Douglas's face darkened. His cohorts all oohed in unison behind him. With the flick of his left hand, Douglas smacked Simon across the right side of his face. As slaps went, this one wasn't even very hard. We had both been smacked around by Douglas much harder before, but the quickness of it took Simon by surprise. His head snapped to the left, and his glasses flew off, hitting the wall. His entire body twitched, and when it did, he knocked over the beer in front of him, which promptly flooded the table and filled my lap with sudsy wetness. I instinctively jumped out of the booth and staggered, stepping right on Douglas's foot. Douglas yelped, and his friends laughed. I knew I had just made a huge, albeit accidental, mistake. I opened my mouth to say something, perhaps an apology, perhaps something tough. That's what you get. But just as I did, Douglas's fist hit me square in the mouth. I rocked backwards, but I felt my teeth dig into his knuckles. For an instant, I saw stars, and my legs went out from under me. I fell hard. The back of my head hit the old hardwood floor. I lay there for just a few seconds, and then I heard a cacophony above me. I had no idea what happened until later when Simon said he saw me hit the floor, got angry, saw red, and charged at Douglas. He hit the jock asshole full in the chest like a football player making a tackle. They both tumbled backwards and over several tables. I opened my eyes and saw something I had only seen in movies. It was a full bar brawl. There were people all over each other, tumbling over tables, smashing bottles, screaming and yelling. Blood flew in all directions. Poor Simon was on top of Douglas trying to get his punches in, but Douglas's friends already had both of his arms tied up and were yanking him off. He never stood a chance. The fists and feet came down like rain on his body. I could hear the punches, and it was like the sound of fists hitting slabs of meat. I heard a sickening crack at one point and had no idea what might have broken inside of him. I tried to get to my feet, but I was dizzy from hitting the floor, and the movement seemed to attract the attention of one of Douglas's friends. This lovely individual immediately kicked me in the chest, and I fell back again, once more hitting my head and now unable to breathe. I must have blacked out, so what happened next I had no clue. I just woke up and was in the passenger seat of Simon's car hours later. When I woke up, my head and chest were on fire. I tasted blood in the back of my throat, and I was having trouble breathing through my nose. Then I looked over at Simon, and my blood froze. His face was covered in lumps, blood, and bruises. He was still snarling, but there was blood caked on his lips and teeth. Simon was hunched over the wheel, driving with an intensity I had never seen before. What happened? I asked. Jesus, you're awake, Simon said through a mouth which somehow sounded as swollen as his face. The bar owner finally stepped in. They kicked Douglas and his cronies out of the place, then helped us get to the car. Where are we going? I asked. We're heading home, Simon said. I think your nose may be broken. They pounded on you even when you were passed out. Jesus, Simon, you need to get to a hospital. Fuck that. No hospital. No way. But we're going to get Douglas for this. This is the last fucking straw. The anger flooded to the surface of his face despite the bruises and blood. Simon was normally so cool about things. This was all so terrifying and disturbing. We're gonna bring Douglas out to the staircase tomorrow, he said. Simon would have been the last person I thought would want to do what he proposed to me, especially not to someone who had once been a friend. Of course, I had suggested the very thing he discussed with me just moments after we sat down at the bar. As he talked, I thought about the three of us as little kids, running around our yards or in nearby parks or even the woods. All those years before becoming teenagers and the genetics switched on and everything changed. It hurt when Douglas began ignoring us. It hurt worse when he and his new friends started calling us names. Then the violence started, as if the verbal abuse was just not enough to get these punks off anymore. Starting with tripping us in the halls or knocking books out of our hands, then punches in the arm and shoulders. Then came the fight challenges, which were really beatings, which evolved into just random poundings for no rhyme or reason. I collapsed in bed the night before Simon showed up the next morning. When he did the next morning come to my home, he was a bruised and battered wreck. One eye was nearly swollen shut, his nose also swollen. Despite his face and the fact he walked up to the front door with a limp, he looked ready to kill. "Come on," he said when I staggered my way out the door. Every part of me hurt. I had just enough time to grab a handful of Advil before Simon nearly dragged me out the door. He shoved me into the passenger seat, and we tore out of the driveway so fast I had to hold on to the strap above my head. "What are we doing, Simon?" I asked. "I told you." "I know what you said last night, but you can't be serious. That would kill Douglas. Plus, how the fuck do we get him all the way out to the staircase?" "I've already told him to meet us there." I played on his ego. Said the fight last night was rigged and he was too fucking chicken to meet us by himself in the woods to fight one-on-one. I even gave him the fucking GPS coordinates. I couldn't believe he was telling me this. "Jesus, Simon," I said. "Planning like that is premeditation. Serious shit." "Think about it," Simon replied coldly. "We don't know for sure a person who goes through dies. We don't know a goddamn thing about the other side. And if they just vanish, there's nothing to say anything happened." "Listen to yourself," I retorted. "You're bending over backwards to justify this. Even you can smell your own bullshit." Simon turned his swollen face right into mine. "Why do you want to save him? Look at what he did to us. It's been getting steadily worse with him for years. Do we just let him kill one of us on some night he goes on a bender and gets a wild hair up his ass?" It was hard to keep arguing. One look at the crazy eyes my friend had was enough to tell me there was no talking him out of this. Plus, he had a point. Every year, Douglas's unexplained hatred of us got worse, and his method of dealing with it got more violent. In my mind's eye, I could clearly see him beating one of us with a bat, or finally showing up to fight us carrying a knife. It was irrational, but we seemed to remind Douglas of some part of himself he didn't want to acknowledge. Perhaps the fact he once had humble beginnings like us. Perhaps a reminder he could end up back down at our level again. We drove out to the spot. I had shut off the arguments in my head, but some part hoped the staircase might be gone. No luck there either. It stood where it had the day before. We got out and approached. Simon walked with a renewed determination and none of the fear. He stood at the bottom and stared up at the top, seemingly satisfied with what he saw. A moment later, Douglas showed up, the sound of his sparkling clean SUV crunching on the gravel behind us. As he did, I realized Simon had given Douglas the coordinates to get here, thus his argument about there being no trace went out the window. Too late now. "I guess I didn't beat you too hard enough last night," Douglas said as he got out of the car. He had a bruised right cheek and some cuts on his face, neck, and arms, but looked about as fresh as could be given the intensity of the fight. "I'll have to rectify that today." "Why?" I heard myself ask before I had even fully formed the word in my brain. "Why do you hate us? Jesus, Douglas, we used to be friends. Why do you hate us now?" Douglas sneered. Do I need a reason? We were never fucking friends, you shit. I put up with you because you were close by. Once I could travel over 2 blocks from my house, I dropped you like the poison you are. Pathetic nerd waste of space. Meant to be alone. Meant to be outcasts who amount to nothing. Built to be prey for guys like me. The people who run the world eat up and spit out useless crap like you. Shut up, you know-nothing asshole. Simon shouted. Guys like me run the world. Guys like you become middle managers with thick spare tires around their guts, trying to bang their college-age secretaries to forget about their fat wives and pathetic children. Douglas regarded Simon for a moment, and a cold smile crossed his face. Then, as if for the first time, he seemed to notice the staircase behind Simon. What the fuck is that thing? He asked, indicating the stairs. Is this some part of your live-action role-playing bullshit or something? What do you think it is? Simon asked. It's a fucking staircase, but why have you assholes built this in the middle of the woods? Why just a staircase? Simon sneered and looked up the stairs at the landing near the top. Remember the game we used to play when we were kids? The one where one of us would stand at the top of a hill or on top of the slide at the park and the others would try to knock the person off? Yeah, I remember, Douglas said. King of the Hill. I was the best at it, and you guys sucked. Feel like trying again? Simon asked, putting one foot on the step to his right. Are you serious? Douglas laughed, and he studied the staircase. I'll knock you off of the fucking thing so fast your head will spin. Maybe your head will hit the ground and come straight off. What is this asshole going to do while I'm up there kicking your ass? It takes multiple people to play, I said. My anger was rising. Suddenly, my reservations about doing this were vanishing. I'll come up there and knock you off if you send Simon down. Douglas snorted and shook his head. For a moment, I thought he might just get in his car and go. All of this sounded ridiculous. Unless you're a coward, of course, Simon muttered. Don't call me a coward, Douglas snapped back, spinning on his heels to face Simon. Get the fuck up there, you dweeb. I'll end this fast so I can get the fuck on with my day. Simon cast a glance my way, and I nodded in reply. A short movement of my head, only noticed by Simon. Then my friend dashed up the wooden stairs. When he got to the top, he put his back to the weird shimmery edge and faced the top of the stairs. Douglas marched up the stairs, looking at his feet and muttering to himself. Something about not being able to believe he was doing this and how he would kill both of us. My heart hammered in my throat, my eyes as wide as I could make them, giving the swelling. When Douglas got halfway up, he finally looked up and paused. I swear my heart stopped. He cocked his head to the side. What the fuck's going on with the air behind you, asshole? He asked. What is this? There's nothing behind me, Simon said, putting his fists up in a pathetic attempt to look like a boxer. Just get up here, let's do this. Douglas sneered. You want to fight? I thought we'd just end up pushing each other around. Fine with me, asshole. You just wait down there, butt plug. I'll deal with you after I drop Simon here on his head. My mouth turned dry, and the breath running in and out of my nose hurt like broken glass. I watched with widening eyes as Douglas strode to the top of the stairs, and the two of them began to circle around each other. Slowly, Douglas walked in front of the spot where Simon had been, with the weird shimmering air behind him. When he was at the prime spot, Simon charged him, hitting Douglas in the chin, then slamming his entire body against the athlete. Douglas laughed, shrugged off both the blows to the face, and then wrapped Simon in his arms and pushed him back. Simon staggered backwards and nearly fell back down the stairs. Pinwheeling his arms, Simon got his footing again and tried another run at Douglas. This time, our former friend stepped aside, but then pushed Simon hard, sending my friend sideways and nearly over the edge of the staircase. Simon slipped off the edge at least halfway. Then he caught himself and somehow stayed on. Douglas and Simon switched sides again. Once again, Simon was in front of the portal. The thug seemed not to notice the shimmering air anymore, totally focused on Simon. Simon stepped closer to the portal. I could actually see the hair on the back of his head stand up. He winced, and there was a fluttering of his shirt as if tiny fingers were pulling at the fabric. Douglas sneered again, and this time he lunged at Simon, going low like a football tackle. Somehow, Simon dodged to the side just enough not to get toppled, but wrapped Douglas up in his arms and used his own momentum against him. In the flash of a second, Douglas was flung from Simon and went headfirst into the portal area. The scream which came next was unreal. Douglas's head just seemed to vanish into thin air. There was his body, his arms flailing, but his head was gone. The shimmering around the portal area got very intense, rippling like throwing a stone into a pond.
Ah!
Douglas screamed.
It hurts! It hurts! Stop!
With his flailing hand, he somehow grabbed a terrified Simon's shirt. The fingers entwined in a death grip, and suddenly, as Douglas began to be pulled further into the portal, Simon found himself being dragged along with him. Simon let out a yelp, and his face turned to look directly into the portal. I don't know what he saw there, as there was nothing evident from my point of view, but he opened his mouth and let out a blood-curdling scream. His eyes bulged out of his head despite the bruises.
Help me!
Simon screamed as he frantically beat at Douglas's hands. His fist did nothing to loosen the grip. As for Douglas, his head and shoulder now appeared to vanish just over the edge of the staircase into thin air. I heard a soft pattering sound between Simon's screams for help. I realized droplets of blood cascaded down from where Douglas's head vanished into nothingness. His entire body twitched and his feet kicked out behind him. But he did not fall over, and he did not loosen his grip on Simon. In fact, if anything, whatever was happening to him in the other world caused his hands to clutch tighter to the fabric. Finally, the horror and paralysis broke, and I ran up the stairs. As I got halfway up, I noticed the steps themselves seemed oddly soft or loose, as if the entire staircase were becoming less stable. I ignored this and ran for Simon. He reached out his arm and I grabbed him, but something on the other side of the portal pulled, and Douglas vanished up to his waist while it knocked Simon to the ground, his hair now over the edge and vanishing into nothing. I heard something on the other side of the portal, but did not look up. I did not want to see what was there. Simon, however, looked back over his shoulder, and he screamed a long, shrill scream which pierced my skull. Spittle flew from his lips, and he frantically kicked and beat at the hand holding him, the heels of his shoes pounding the top landing. I fell to the ground and added my own hands to the pounding on Douglas's fist. It would not budge, would not let go. Simon's body was dragged closer and closer to the edge. The top of the staircase was now soaked in blood. It ran in rivulets across the landing and began pattering its way down the stairs behind me. Douglas's screams had stopped, and now a sickening crunching sound, like a giant eating the universe's biggest bag of potato chips. With each crunch, Douglas's body twitched and moved, but his goddamn fucking fingers would not relinquish their hold. Simon's right foot vanished into the portal, vanishing into thin air. His eyes were wild and rolled in his head, and when his shoe disappeared, he screamed at a level I didn't think was possible. His pounding on Douglas's hand somehow increased in frequency and strength. I got back to my feet and raised my foot. Without warning Simon, I stomped down on Douglas's hand. The crunching beneath my feet was momentarily louder than the sounds coming from the other side of the portal. Simon pulled his foot back, and I saw his shoe was gone. Flesh hung from his bones in strips. He looked into the portal while I raised my foot again and again, smashing Douglas's fingers over and over. Finally, as Simon's other foot brushed against the edge and he howled again, Douglas's hand let go. With all my might, I heaved, grasping at Simon's shirt just as Douglas had. Together, we tumbled backwards, and a moment later, we both tumbled down the stairs. By the time we reached the bottom, we were both streaked and covered with blood. When we hit the bottom, I scrambled away from the staircase. As we fell, I could feel the wood beneath me becoming less, as if it were slowly vanishing from reality around us. The entire structure shook. I grabbed Simon, who still moaned and rocked in agony, and dragged him about 10 feet from the structure. Simon collapsed in a heap, and it was me who saw the staircase crumble to dust. It was me who saw something beyond, from within the portal, peer out into our world and look directly at me. Something huge, unspeakable, beyond description. But it had teeth, hands, and claws. For the merest fraction of an instant, the portal got bigger, and I could see there was not only this one creature, but dozens of them within the other world, all of them snapping their jaws and jostling for position near the portal. I had a flash of understanding. This was a trap. Whatever was on the other side was not some dumb animal. They were creatures setting traps like this just looking for people who want to crawl their way up to the top. How many people did so? I remembered how my first instinct upon seeing the staircase was to climb up. I didn't understand why they put them in remote areas. Perhaps these were just places where it was easiest to reach through and insert something into our reality. How did they build such a thing out of wood? I had no insight into that either. I just had the distinct image of a pitcher plant or Venus flytrap. Plants which emit a sweet smell to attract insects, who then end up trapped and devoured. I had a moment where I felt as if the abyss yawned wide below my feet. I felt my own sanity slip just a fraction, and I understood there were worlds within worlds. In some areas, the space between these realities was very narrow. Things could slip through. Beyond the doorway were creatures both benign and unspeakably evil. Some of them hungered. I collapsed on the ground, and the staircase crumbled. It fell to the floor of the forest with a soft whump. The collapse raised dust and dirt from the ground. Then, the wood began to turn gray and float off, slowly blowing away in the wind. A moment later, it was all gone. A fraction of a second after it happened, the birds started chirping again. I stood there open-mouthed for a long time, just trying to wrap my head around what had happened. It was an impossible task, so I crouched down to check Simon. His foot was just a mass of bloody tissue. Blood ran into the leaves. There were scrapes all over him, and a huge chunk of his hair had been just yanked right out of his head. Blood seeped there. Simon's eyes were closed, and he moaned, rocking gently. I did my best to stop the bleeding from his foot. Somehow the blood vessels seemed almost cauterized. It was not spraying blood, but oozing. I had no explanation, but was already teetering on madness. It was a question to ponder later. "Simon," I whispered. "Simon, come on, we have to get out of here. Hey, buddy, come on." Simon just kept rocking, but when I prodded him, he got to his feet. I had him lean on me, and we limped our way to the car. He climbed into the passenger seat. He seemed totally gone, unable to do much more than moan. I cast one more glance at the spot where the staircase had been. Nothing now. I saw a rabbit hop right across the area without stopping, like it had never been. I felt the moment needed me to say something, but couldn't come up with anything. So I shifted the car into drive, did a U-turn, and drove off. Over the course of the next few months, things got weird in town. Douglas had vanished, and the rest of the town went apeshit. Yes, the cops talked to us since the fight between myself, Simon, and Douglas's friends had gotten around to pretty much everyone. I kept to the story I had seen nothing, had been knocked unconscious, and had not seen Douglas in days. It was almost true. Of course, they found nothing. Not a trace. No phone. Simon's phone was also gone, although this one I smashed into tiny pieces and buried around the area as far as 20 miles away. As for Simon, he was gone. He would not speak, but had finally stopped moaning. Now he stared straight ahead and barely blinked. I told authorities he came staggering out of the woods one day close to my house, and I found him like this, bloody foot and scalp with the scrapes. I had no idea what happened. There were quite a few surgeries to save his foot, but the doctors managed to do so. He didn't really walk much anymore, but if he actually did, it would forever be with a severe limp. I must have been a good liar, because the cops stopped asking me about Douglas. They focused on other things and other suspects. To this day, Douglas's parents still hold vigils, and the town comes out in droves to search the woods. I've even gone with, although I know where he is, and the fact he's gone. As for me, well, I sleep very little these days. When I close my eyes, I hear the crunching sounds and see the things I saw for an instant on the other side. I see stairs now and nearly have a total panic attack. I avoid walking upstairs as much as possible. It's not as hard as you think when you live where I do. Sometimes I close my eyes and hear Douglas screaming. It doesn't seem like memory. It seems like he's right in the room, perhaps just beyond the veil. Just to the left of what I can actually see with the naked eye, perhaps reaching out to me. Perhaps some part of him, the untouchable part we often call a soul, still lives and is trying to come back. Maybe it's looking for revenge. Maybe it just wants to be heard. But mostly, I worry about other reports of staircases. I follow the threads online. I read the reports. I read the detractors. I know the truth. There are more and more of them. What's more, people are searching for them now. This fills me with fear. Perhaps the more we acknowledge them, the bolder the other side gets. What happens when they decide to come through? I lie awake and live in fear, because I know stairs work both ways. Things go up, but they can come down too. They can always come down. A lesson learned. Never climb a staircase that appears to go nowhere, because it may turn out to lead somewhere filled with nightmares and primal terror. At least that's what happens when the night comes out. You've been listening to When the Night Comes Out, a weekly horror anthology podcast with stories by Brian W. Alaspa and narrated by Allie James. For Brian's work, visit his website at www.brianwalaspa.com or visit amazon.com for his books of fiction and nonfiction. Be sure to listen to Allie's work on Facebook at Allie James Projects.